That's kind of hard to fake. They were genuinely concerned about their safety and genuinely responsive to the efforts of the Rangers to go in and rescue them.
Now, what about when you come back? Do you, I suppose you could be forgiven if you were a little bit cynical about the way you're being cheered and patted on the back now after the way you were treated when you came back from Vietnam. What's your assessment of the American public? Fickle?
No, I think not. I think times have changed. It's somewhat difficult to compare the situation in Grenada with a prolonged situation that, of course, we endured in Southeast Asia.
Well, talk about that for a minute, because that's essentially what I was talking about with General Haig and Eric Sevareid a few moments ago. It worries me a little that maybe the success seems too easy in terms of Grenada, and that folks may want you guys to do that all over the place. I mean, it looks like a nice solution, doesn't it?
Well, I simply would respond to that, Ted, by saying this. We are not 10 feet tall in the Ranger battalions. As Colonel Taylor pointed out, in the 1st Battalion, they actually mirror one another. We're simply a highly disciplined, extremely well-trained 600-man elements, both battalions, that are specifically trained to respond to these type contingencies as well as conventional contingencies. This particular situation just happened to be tailor-made, if you will, to our rapid response capability to go in and do a very surgical, professional mission, which, of course, this turned out to be for both of us.
How much advance notice did you have, you and your men?
Enough to perform the mission well.
Okay. I know when a man's not going to answer a question. Talk a little about the new mood that exists in America today. Well, go ahead. Just take it from there. Let me make the question just that broad.
Okay. Let me respond by saying this. From the time that we actually had our first elements come back into a Hunter Army airfield, and of course there were elements of both Ranger battalions that I believe were in your previous clip. And of course the lead aircraft were met not only by the Army Chief of Staff, General Wickham, but the civilian populace turned out, and that flow continued. We have literally received hundreds of cards and letters and telegrams and phone calls, not just from military people, but a genuine outpouring from the local area here in Washington and Oregon, but throughout the United States. And the general trend is as follows. We're very, very proud to have, quote, a force that is disciplined and well-trained enough to respond to a situation that can occur anywhere in short notice. And we're extremely proud to, quote, have people who can go in and win as opposed to not have success. And I think that's the greatest single thing that points out the success of this operation. Americans love winners, and if anyone was able to portray in a very winning mood, it was the operation by the Rangers, who jumped in at dawn that morning, seized the airfield, and obviously then were given follow-on missions to rescue Americans within that area.
Colonel, you and your men have been very modest about how quickly and how easily you accomplished your mission, but just tell us a little bit about the mission itself. Did you come across any Cubans initially when you landed?
There were Cubans and Grenadan militia within the area. That's correct.
And what happened?
They basically capitulated to the both Ranger battalions as we went in and seized the airfield in Salinas. One of our primary missions was to seize that airfield to ensure that the multinational peacekeeping force could land in that arena. To do that, the airfield had been made basically inoperative in the respect of landing C-130 or 141 aircraft. Our primary mission initially was to go in and secure that airfield and make it operational so we could, in fact, receive the multinational peacekeeping force.
You mean there was no resistance from either the Grenadans or the Cubans?
Yes, there was. There was considerable resistance from both the Cubans and the Grenadans.
Well, because you make it sound as though they capitulated right away. What happened between the time you landed and the time they capitulated?
It took us about 2.5 hours to overcome the basic resistance both on the airfield and the area surrounding the airfield.
All right, Colonel, if you'll stand by, please, in a moment, we'll be joined once again by former Secretary of State Alexander Haig and by Eric Sevareid. We'll also have an update from Tokyo on President Reagan's visit to Japan.
The line. The line is low and long. The line is straight through a curve. The line is strong. The new line of Civics from Honda. The line is drawn.
Up to now, frozen dinners had a place in every home, but it wasn't the dining room. But now there are dinner classics from Armour. Complete meals like tender sirloin tips in mushroom sauce, scalloped potatoes, and crisp Italian vegetables.
Harold, tonight we're eating in the dining room.
Dinner classics from Armour. Frozen dinners so good they belong in the dining room.
So, this is the dining room.
Bringing people new technology is nothing new to AT&T.
Hello?
Over the years, we've made calling easier and easier. Our technology has done a lot for people. And now we can do even more. We're the new AT&T, and there's no limit to what we can bring you.
What exactly is this?
Dad, this is the future.
AT&T, we're reaching out in new directions.
Thursday, it's an all-new hour of unexpected laughs.
I've got the buns.
Yes?
Your favorite celebrities get caught
God, I wish I hadn't said that.
in life's most embarrassing moments. Then, the Trauma Center moves to its new time, 9/8 Central and Mountain.
Stop him!
A thief threatens innocent lives.
Cuttery, stop breathing.
And a childish prank goes too far.
We need the chopper.
As a young life hangs in the balance.
6, be careful.
Jennings, distinguished.
You bet Peter's distinguished in the way he looks, in the way he reports, in the way he thinks.
Jennings, worldly.
He's been everywhere, seen everything, and covered news all over the world.
Jennings, unique.
No one can imitate Peter Jennings, and he is not obliged to imitate anyone.
Jennings, intelligent.
He is one of the smartest, keenest men in the business.
Weeknights, ABC's World News Tonight with Peter Jennings. The difference can be distinguished.
Joining us again now from Los Angeles, former Secretary of State Alexander Haig, and from Washington, Eric Sevareid. Eric, I don't want to overdo it, don't want to flog a dead horse, but the issue of the press having been excluded for the first couple of days, serious, not serious? Have we made too much of it?
No, I don't think we've made too much of it. It is serious. You can't do that kind of thing in this society. It's a practical mistake in the first place. It will rebound against the military, against the government. It shouldn't have happened. You know, I can think of many instances, World War II particularly, where the press was kept out and with rather bad results. In fact, when that war first started in the fall of '39, I was in Paris. The understanding was that we could not go to the front up along the Rhine until we had specific permission. So there were no direct orders to that effect. Well, after 2 or 3 weeks, I and 2 or 3 friends of mine, other reporters, just simply went there. And we got there. And in the meantime, there had been all these stories all over the world about great battles and the Balfour Gap and all that, and people were terribly uneasy to know what had happened. Well, nothing had happened. There hadn't been any fighting, which we could rather quickly establish. Many such things. You know, my military hero, if I had any, was General George Catlett Marshall in World War II, and I used to talk to him in his home and at the Pentagon from time to time. He worried about this a great deal. He wanted as little censorship as possible on the press covering the war, and only censorship for security reasons. He pointed out that there would be, if people were kept from knowing what was really happening, and for the first few weeks or months of the war, you couldn't print a picture of a dead American body. I think he changed that. But if people didn't know what happened, and certainly bad things are always going to happen, they find out later, then there's resentment, there's backlash, there's all the novels, the books, the whole thing happens all over again.
General Haig, I saw, and I'm sorry because I've forgotten the Admiral's name, but I saw some Admiral's quote very favorably reproduced in a letter to the Wall Street Journal the other day, and the essence of it was, tell the press the truth, tell them everything, tell them when the war's over, and tell them who won. What's your reaction?
Well, I think in the past we've been best served as a nation by giving our press timely access to events as they occur. I do share the view, however, that there are occasions where security requires censorship and a set of relationships between the military or the government and the press, which I have confidence the press have in the past and would in the future continue to abide by. After all, they're Americans, and they're as conscious of the need to protect the lives of our fighting men as officials in government.
Colonel Hagler, do you feel that you feel the military was badly handled by the press in Vietnam? And if you're ready to express a personal opinion, are you happy that the press was kept out for the first couple of days in Grenada?
I suppose the best way to respond to that is I personally wasn't mishandled by the press in Vietnam. I was simply a rifle platoon leader and rifle company commander, so I suppose that's a matter of perch perspective. I can only base that based upon my treatment when I arrived from successive tours in Vietnam, and of course the articles vis-a-vis what I thought was actually happening from my perspective and what was being reported in the press. If you're asking me to respond to should have in fact the press not been allowed to come into the area where we actually jumped in on the morning of the 26th, or were allowed to follow directly on close on the heels of the other activities, ongoing activities, I would have to agree with General Haig in the respect that I think there are in fact times that it is best not to advertise the fact that you're going to go into that particular area of operations. Operational security was extremely tight, which allowed us to go in and do the initial airborne assault into that airfield. I think perhaps that might be one of those criterias. There are a lot of people well above my pay grade that get paid to make those decisions. I was simply aware, even after I came out of Grenada, which was on the following Friday, that there had in fact been some prohibition on the press coming into the area that we had been operating in.
General Haig, I saw you laughing before. I guess one of the reasons that the question is asked is when the American press isn't there, then what happens is that what gets printed in this country is frequently what's being distributed by Radio Havana, for example, or Radio Moscow. In the absence of other information, all kinds of propaganda gets distributed then, doesn't it?
Yeah, but Ted, let me, I know the press is very sensitive about the criticism of their handling of Vietnam, and in some cases I think it was excessive and less than prudent. But the basic policy was not bad press, but bad policy. And if we ever permit the two to get confused, I think as a democracy we're in some trouble.
And you think we have confused it?
Well, I think there's a tendency in some circles to overemphasize the role of the press in the outcome of Vietnam. And I would have been one that would have been critical from time to time. But the basic problem was bad policy.
All right, gentlemen, let's take another break. We'll be back with more of our discussion in just a moment.
I decided to test Heinz ketchup myself to see why more folks choose it. And you know what happened? Heinz didn't run. Then I tasted Heinz, because to me that's proof. One taste, and I knew which ketchup I liked best.
Unbeatably thick, rich Heinz is America's 3-to-1 choice over any other single ketchup. Taste it for yourself.
No contest.
Heinz, America's favorite for thick, rich ketchup.
Mr. Coffee knows how to say good morning.
Last night, I just programmed Mr. Coffee to have my coffee ready when I wake up. With this electronic digital command system, Mr. Coffee woke up before I did, and the brewing started automatically. Now that great Mr. Coffee flavor's ready and waiting. Mr. Coffee really knows how to say good morning. Now, Mr. Coffee is also available in analog clock model.
Detailed studies of the human body, biomedical research, computer-aided design, 2 years and countless clay models, trying different shapes, new materials, doing it over, again and again, all to design a more comfortable, durable seat for General Motors cars and trucks. Leonardo would have loved it.
Nobody sweats the details like GM.
A flood is coming. You try to keep it from destroying everything. But is there enough time? There is something that will protect you from the terrible cost of rebuilding. It's National Flood Insurance. It covers what your homeowner's policy doesn't cover. It's backed by the government and available to the people who need it most. Don't wait. Ask your insurance agent about National Flood Insurance now. Because if you're flooded out, you don't have to be wiped out.
Hi. Want to stay healthy and try to reduce the risk of heart attack? One step is to develop good eating habits to include foods that are low in fat and low in cholesterol. One such food is fish. And as part of a balanced, low-fat diet, it can help keep your cholesterol levels low. So, to help reduce the risk of heart attack, look for low cholesterol, low-fat foods and eat sensibly. Your heart will love you for it. From the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute.
Continuing our discussion now with Eric Severide. Eric, you wanted to respond to what General Haig had to say about policy.
Oh, well, I was delighted to hear the general say that the American press, did not lose the war in Vietnam. That nonsensical idea has been around quite a while, and it's become part of the conventional wisdom, at least among a good many of the military. I never believed it. But I did want to say that the argument that security considerations kept the press out of this Grenada invasion or rescue operation, whatever it was, I can't believe that. The leakage about that, the knowledge that this was going to happen, did not come from press people. It came, as I understand it, from various diplomats, government people in various Caribbean governments and islands who were talking constantly and traveling back and forth discussing this thing. Of course it's going to leak out. And in any case, the American military have a long, long experience in organizing a small pool of reporters to go in on any kind of operation, some much more dangerous than that. We all know that. I can't think of a case, at the moment anyway, where press irresponsibility resulted in some military tragedy. I just can't think of any.
Let me, if I may, broaden the discussion out, though, to talk about policy in general. Is there a danger that what has clearly been a political success, a public relations success, that may lead us into the confused notion that what we have now is a reflection of a foreign policy, that what was a tactical maneuver becomes confused with a strategy?
I hope it doesn't. I am not one who believes that high explosives solve complicated human problems, except perhaps very temporarily and locally. But I don't think we're all that reckless people. I think we've been very restrained. We've been very restrained with Mr. Castro, at least since the Bay of Pigs. He hasn't accomplished all that much in 25 years in subverting Latin America. We've got along somehow. I don't think we're a reckless people. A lot of Europeans do, but they always think those things of us. If we're quiet, they think we're not leading. If we do something rather radical like Grenada, then they think we're trigger happy, but you can't lie awake every night worrying about their reaction.
General Haig, if I understood you correctly at the beginning of this program, you seem to reflect the notion that perhaps the United States has been a little bit too restrained over the past 10 years or so. Or at least is perceived by its adversaries as being too restrained.
No, I think there's no question about that, but I don't mean that necessarily in the use of armed forces. But in our resistance, using all of the assets available to the United States to stand up to Soviet-inspired aggression in the developing world. And I gave you the litany of cases. Hardly a 6-month period passed when we didn't witness an important setback to free world interests, which were basically unchallenged up until certainly Afghanistan. Now, clearly the time had come and long since passed, when it was necessary for the American president to stand up, when justified, to support the principles that we Americans espouse.
There was a time, General Haig, when during the Nixon era, when then Secretary of State Henry Kissinger used to talk privately about the so-called madman theory, that it was rather useful to have adversaries of the United States believe that the man sitting in the White House was someone who might stop at nothing, that there was this kind of dangerous chemistry that had to be restrained only by the restraint of our adversaries. Are we seeing a little bit of that now, too?
No, I don't think so, Ted. I think, if anything, we are best served by consistency in our policy, reliability, and even to a degree, predictability. On occasion, a degree of unpredictability is constructive, but certainly not a madman theory.
Eric Sevareid, a couple of generations of Americans have grown up listening to your analyses and paying a good deal of heed to them. Well, talk to us a little about our foreign policy in general.
Well, you know, what you're just talking about with the general, about keeping our adversaries uncertain about our... This goes back to John Foster Dulles, going to the brink, he called it, make them nervous. It's a pretty dangerous kind of thing. I think at times, maybe you got to do that. But brinkmanship is pretty hard to manage. I'm not sure we're all that wise. I really don't think that there was much we could have done or should have done, personally, about Angola, Ethiopia, and Yemen. We seem to have developed the notion that the world is our sick oyster and can be cured by us. I think the world's much bigger than that, much more various. I would have hated to see us get into Angola, for example. I think we'd still be there if we'd gone in any military force. I wish we could get out of the Middle East, frankly.
Colonel Hagler, the rest of us who stay here at home, I guess, have the freedom to theorize, but you're the one who had to go in, you and your men, so take the last observation then, the Grenada observation.
Well, my observation, I'll keep very brief. It is incredibly inspiring to have Americans come up and stop you on the street, stop your young soldiers on the street because their hair is rather close-cropped, and ask you, number one, if you're a Ranger. And, of course, when you respond yes, they pat you on the back. They tell you, God bless you, God bless your family. They appreciate the sacrifices that you make by maintaining the readiness that, of course, we're required to maintain to respond. And it's just a great time to be wearing a black beret and serving one's country in a Ranger battalion. And the young Rangers who deserve the full credit, of course, are the young non-commissioned officers and soldiers who really do, in fact, stay honed to a very fine professional edge, and, of course, are ready to respond to a like situation whenever we're called upon to do so.
All right, Colonel Hagler, thank you very much. Eric Sevareid, General Haig, appreciation to all of you. Thank you. Next, an update on President Reagan's trip to Japan from Chief Foreign Correspondent Pierre Salinger.
Who makes the best-built American cars? Based on National Highway Traffic Safety recall data over the last 2 years, Chrysler does, because Chrysler had the lowest % of recalls. And only Chrysler has the confidence to back the cars it builds for 5 years or 50,000 miles, with protection on the engine, powertrain, and against outer body rust-through. Based on recalls alone, Chrysler makes the best-built American cars, and with 550 protection, they're not only the best built, they're the best backed.
To some, the breakup of AT&T is a shattering event. But Merrill Lynch know-how can make it your lucky break. Our top-ranked research team studied AT&T from top to bottom. We can help you make the right move. Manage 8 stocks, keep some, sell some, or move into our special AT&T stock fund. Now that opportunity is knocking, take advantage of a real break. Call Merrill Lynch, a breed apart.
There's perhaps only one 10-minute dinner you'd serve with a 10-year-old wine. New Le Menu frozen dinners. Each Le Menu is perfectly planned, like tender chicken parmigiana with fettuccine alfredo and Italian green beans. But it's well worth remembering, Le Menu also goes well with just water. New Le Menu dinners from Swanson.
Hello. Here's some important advice for you from the IRS. If someone approaches you about participating in a tax shelter, be sure to consider what's involved very carefully and make sure you seek competent tax advice. Many tax shelters are perfectly legal, but others are abusive and clearly illegal. And you could face severe civil penalties plus high interest rates on back taxes. So be careful. If a deal sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Exercise and proper diet are two good ways of taking care of yourself. Another is Medic Alert. If you have a special medical problem, a heart condition, for example, your Medic Alert bracelet lists your condition plus the phone number of Medic Alert's 24-hour medical information center. In an emergency, the Medic Alert Center will provide rescue personnel with your vital medical data in seconds. So take good care of yourself. Join Medic Alert today. For more information, write or call Medic Alert.
President Reagan is now in the second day of his visit to Japan, and while he has talks with Japanese leaders scheduled later in the day, seeing the sights, and some rather dramatic sights at that, was the first thing on his agenda. Pierre Salinger has a report from Tokyo.
For President Reagan, it was a plunge into Japan's feudal past, a stark contrast to the highly industrialized nation he is visiting today. Yet there was a certain logic to the visit. For the palace where this morning's events took place is dedicated to the memory of Emperor Meiji, who ruled this country from 1868 to 1912, the period Japan made that tremendous leap into modern times. What Mr. Reagan saw at the Meiji Shrine was the Yabusame, an extraordinary example of ancient Japanese writing skills. Formed by direct descendants of those who organized the original rites, the horsemen rode at full speed, firing their arrows at 3 separate targets. The multicolored costumes of the riders, who all belonged to the highly respected Takeda school, stood out under the gray skies which covered Tokyo on this second day of the American president's visit. Later today, the bulk of the important substantive talks between Mr. Reagan and the Japanese Prime Minister, Mr. Nakasone, will take place. At a luncheon in his honor, President Reagan praised Japan's important industrial power and efficiency and said that communist countries just have not been able to maintain the same pace. He cited North Korea and East Germany as examples, which he said were vastly inferior in industrial potential to South Korea and West Germany. The talks today will center on Japanese defense capabilities, and Mr. Reagan's hope they will be increased to meet what he perceives as growing Soviet military power in the Far East. Pierre Salinger for Nightline in Tokyo.
I'll be back in a moment.
Great heroes have risen in their time. Albert Schweitzer served his fellow man in Africa. Jonas Salk developed a vaccine to prevent polio. They were their brother's keeper. In our town, unsung heroes perform courageous acts every day. They are their brother's keeper.
Tomorrow on World News Tonight with Peter Jennings, a report on the richest prize fight in history. Tomorrow night's boxing match between Roberto Duran and marvelous Marvin Hagler. That's our report for tonight. I'm Ted Koppel in Washington. For all of us here at ABC News, good night.
This has been ABC News Nightline. For those of you who wish to obtain a transcript of tonight's broadcast, send $2 to Nightline, Box 234, Ansonia Station, New York, New York, 10023. Nightline is a presentation of ABC News.
Thursday.
Thursday. It's an all-new hour of laughs when your favorite celebrities get caught.
I wish I hadn't said that.
In life's most embarrassing moments. Then, Trauma Center moves to its new time, 9, 8 Central and Mountain. When a childish prank threatens an innocent life.
6, be careful.
Tomorrow on ABC.